Successful businesses in America come from business owners, even kids, and not the federal government. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Mrs. Maloney, for 5 minutes.
I thank the Speaker for my recognition, and I rise as the founder and co-chair of the Hellenic Caucus to speak on the 38th anniversary of the 1974 illegal Turkish invasion and occupation of Cyprus. We must ensure that the passage of time does not allow us to forget that the Cyprus issue is the result of an illegal invasion and ongoing occupation. It is long overdue for Turkey to withdraw its troops from Cyprus so that the island can move forward as one nation. Turkey continues forcibly to occupy more than one-third of Cyprus with more than 48,000 troops. In addition, to date, Turkey has repeatedly ignored many of the United Nations resolutions pertaining to Cyprus and has continued to occupy the island in complete violation of international law. The destruction of religious and cultural sites and artifacts continues unabated, and a long list of Turkish actions that flagrantly disrespect the rights and religious freedom of the Cypriot people. In the last Congress, the Hellenic Caucus passed a resolution in the House calling for the protection of these religious sites and artifacts in Turkish-occupied areas. We have also worked on a resolution that has been introduced by Mr. Bilirakis and Mr. Engel, H.R. 676, which calls upon to halt the Republic of Turkey's illegal colonization of the Republic of Cyprus with non-Cypriot populations. They are moving people onto the island. It's reported there are 500,000 Cypriot phones in the Turkish area. So the population, no one knows how many more people they're moving in. And in Cyprus, in its efforts to control all of its territory, to end Turkey's occupation, and to exploit its energy resources without illegal interference by Turkey. In 2011, they discovered gas in the Cypriot area. The Noble Energy Company, a private energy company from Texas, discovered that a field off the coast of Cyprus may hold as much as 8 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, the first discovery off the divided island nation. This is tremendously important for energy independence and for an ally to be able to support America and our energy needs. And the beginning of drilling by Noble prompted Turkey in September to send a vessel accompanied by warships and fighter jets to the area. Cyprus is divided after Turkish invaded the northern third of the island in '74, and Turkey does not recognize the Greek Cypriot government. So this is yet another development that the Turkish country has brought to the island of Cyprus. There have been some successes for Cyprus. In May of 2004, Cyprus, with the support of the United States, joined the European Union. And during the second half of this year, Cyprus took over the very important and prestigious position of presidency of the Council of the European Union. This is the first time Cyprus presided over the Council of the EU since it became a member of it in 2004. Yesterday, a group of Hellenic Caucus members met with a group of leaders from the district that I am honored to represent. They included Phil Christopher, Peter Papanikolaou, and other national leaders of the Cypriot American community and other Greek American leaders. They came to participate in the hearings before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the confirmation hearing for Mr. Koenig. He was nominated by President Obama, John Koenig, to be the next U.S. ambassador to Cyprus, and we are hopeful that the confirmation will move forward. We are also very concerned about a bill that has been put forward that gives preferential treatment to Turkey over other countries on contracts and activities that take place on American Indian areas. And this has caused a great deal of concern with the members of the caucus, and I now want to express my opposition to the Indian Tribal Trade and Investment Demonstration Project Act. This bill would give preferential treatment to Turkish businesses to engage in investment activities on Indian tribal lands, and I question why they are being singled out for this consideration given the illegal occupation that continues. I request unanimous consent to put the remainder of my comments into the record and to express my strong support for Cyprus and the vital role it is playing in European affairs and the strong ally they have been to the United States. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Royce, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, July 20th marks the 38th anniversary of the Turkish invasion of the island of Cyprus. That invasion claimed the lives of about 5,000 Cypriots. In the neighborhood of 200,000 people were forcibly expelled from their homes during that time period. To put that in perspective, that was a third of the population of the country. If this were to happen in the United States, it would be the equivalent of about 100,000 people becoming refugees in their own land. And as we stand here today, that occupation continues. There's over 30,000 Turkish troops on the island. They're stationed on over a third of Cyprus. And sadly, that occupied area of this beautiful land is one of the most militarized areas in the world. I have seen this on both sides of that divide. It is truly tragic that despite the wishes of Cypriots on both sides of that line, that this cannot be resolved. And the Cyprus-Turkey issue, unlike many others, is one that the international community has been able to agree on. There have been 75 resolutions adopted in the Security Council, more than 13 by the General Assembly, calling for the return of the refugees to their homes and to their properties, and for the withdrawal of those Turkish troops from Cyprus. President Dimitris Christofias has followed through on his promise to make the solution of that problem his top priority, his principal concern. I met with him when I was in Nicosia 3 years ago, and his commitment to finding a solution greatly impressed me in that he had reached out to Turkish Cypriots. I had my own opportunity when I was in northern Cyprus to talk to Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, and they confirmed that their desire was to find a resolution to this problem, to find a way to have Turkish troops leave the island. And there's certainly no lack of goodwill, I think, on the side of, in terms of the Cypriot community. So since 2008, there have been these full-fledged negotiations with leaders of the Turkish Cypriot community. I think that the problem here is that that effort needs a reliable partner, a reasonable partner. And I question whether Turkey is listening in that process. From everything I've seen, they're not listening yet. I would point out that Cyprus and the United States share a deep and abiding commitment to upholding the ideals of freedom, democracy, justice, human rights, the international rule of law. After the Lebanon crisis in 2006, if you'll recall, Cyprus served as the principal transit location for people evacuating Lebanon, including our U.S. citizens. I had constituents that went through Cyprus at that time. In the '83 Beirut barracks bombing, it was Cyprus that provided the staging ground for the U.S. evacuation and rescue efforts after that bombing. But I'd point out also that since the discovery of gas reserves in the eastern Mediterranean, the U.S. has advocated including revenue sharing from energy resources in those Cyprus settlement talks, urging that they be shared with the Cypriot community on both sides of that line. It's important to note that there are concrete efforts underway by the heads of the respective communities to reunify. Greek and Turkish Cypriots alike want to see that solution. And again, in my view, what stands in the way here is Turkey at the present time, and I wish they would reconsider their position. You can see the extent to which Cyprus is willing to compromise with these newly discovered energy resources. Greek Cypriot leaders are willing in principle to share the benefits of future gas production with Turkish Cypriots. Their only request is that revenues not be shared with those 30,000 plus Turkish soldiers on the island, and that's still not good enough for Turkey. You know, Mr. Speaker, 38 years of occupation, needless militarization in this part of the world, this divide should have ended long, long ago. There is still time to right this wrong. I hope Turkey reconsiders, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Clark, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would ask to have the option to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, I introduced a resolution in this House calling the illiteracy of our African American and Hispanic men in this country to be a national crisis. By teaching our young men how to read, we can help build their character, we can save their lives, we can also reduce violent crime. Because many of our young men will no longer be on the streets, they'll be in schools, and they'll also have the skills that they need to get good paying jobs. Today, I wish to offer that resolution in recognition of the memory of a great man of honor, Marcel Dion Jackson. We need more men like Mr. Jackson. Marcel Jackson recently gave his life in defense of another. He was a courageous member of Detroit 300, which is a community organization committed to deter crime in the streets of Detroit. If we help give our young men hope, hope through education, hope by building their character, by reading inspiring books, hope that they can have a better life, raise a family, that will save lives and make Metro Detroit and our country a better place to live. Marcel Jackson lived and died so that we who live in Detroit could have a better life there. Mr. Speaker, I ask this House to recognize the memory of the life of Marcel Dion Jackson, a great man of honor, and I yield back my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schilling, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to rise and say just a few words in the honor of the remarkable life and note the passing of a constituent of mine and an accomplished small businessman from Central Illinois, a businessman named Mel Feldman. I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Feldman in 2010 when he shared with me the story of his life and the times, and I'd like to share some of those with you. For it encapsulates much of what we all love about our country and what I love about Central Illinois. Mel was born in Portland in 1913. He was born in Poland in 1913, which he and his family fled soon thereafter to escape the programs that arose during the First World War. The family eventually settled in St. Louis, where Mel studied engineering. He became a career in the radio business, which was hustling a job that was a remote engineer with KMLX during the 1930s, where he courted his wife Ruth while doing remote broadcasts of big band concerts on Saturday nights. Later, he was an engineer and sidekick of a young broadcaster named Harry Carey, of who we're very familiar with. Mel fought in World War II, and upon returning home, he and a friend bought a radio station in Springfield, Illinois. Operating on a shoestring budget, they worked day and night for years to get established, eventually buying 2 other radio stations in Peoria and coming to employ nearly 100 workers. He and his wife, Ruth, became pillars of the community at the synagogue there in the central Illinois area, where she helped run the preschool. In the 1980s, they sold their stations and retired, choosing to remain in the area to be near their family. To go from the streets of Eastern Europe to the prosperity and stability of central Illinois in the 21st century is a journey that is difficult for many of us to fathom. It is to the enormous benefit of our community that people like Mel came to the United States and braved wars and oppression and poverty and all kinds of other tribulations for the chance to settle down and raise their families amongst us. They are one of the things that make Illinois such a great and rewarding place to live and raise our families. America owes much to immigrants, and Central Illinois owes much to the contributions of Mel and Ruth Feldman, whose legacy goes beyond the radio stations he established and the synagogue they served and the family they raised. Their lives touched and bettered so many friends and neighbors in Peoria, who I know are mourning Mel's passing, but at the same time celebrating his life. With that, I yield back.
Chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 4155, an act to direct the head of each federal department and agency to treat relevant military training as sufficient to satisfy training or certification requirements for federal licenses.
Pursuant to Clause 12, Paren A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess to hour 12 noon today.
So the House is gaveling out for now. They'll return at noon Eastern to continue work on Defense Department spending. $519 billion for next budget year. That's $1 billion more than this year and $3 billion more than the President requested. Members are working on amendments. Republican leaders are allowing as many amendments as members want to bring up. A vote on final passage could be pushed until tomorrow. Live coverage when members return here on C-SPAN.